The reason I was using writing as an example is that, as adults, we all have things that we've always wanted to do that we never have. And sometimes...
is that why people have bucket lists?
I don't really think so. But,
yeah.
I mean, bucket lists seem like the fun you wanted to have that you never did. And so the macro shift might be, why do I resist having fun?
Mm-hmm.
That might be the macro. And in the case of the movie The Bucket List, we all know why they stopped resisting. They were dying. And in fact, the truth is, if they had thought about it, they were dying their whole lives. They could have been doing this all along, and they didn't need to compress it into 1 year, right?
Yeah.
So they had their container changed, and their point of view changed. So in a sense, you could call that like a macro shift, but their true physical environment and everything changed that really pushed them in that direction, as opposed to what we do in focusing, which is some people simply use it because their lives are beautiful and they want to make sure they're staying in balance, and they want to be able to go back and check and make sure they're always checking. Did I remember to see how that feels? Life is busy. Having a job is busy. Going to the grocery store is busy. Having children is busy. Did I make time? Did I make time to go inside and check and see how that balance is today? Did I do that? So they might use focusing as part of their daily practice, weekly practice, just to do that.
Well, what I've taken from this is, like, every day we do some hygiene for our physical bodies. We wash our hair, we brush our teeth, we clean our body, but we need to do some internal cleansing.
Absolutely.
And so the focusing is scrubbing internally. And so we don't create this big, huge mess in there that leads to disease or unhappiness, depression,
well,
etc.
as long as you're scrubbing lovingly.
Yeah.
As long as you're scrubbing lovingly. I would say it's more like grooming.
Okay.
I have a Maine Coon cat. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those, but they're the biggest cats, biggest domesticated cats that are...
20-pounders?
Yes, they can be 20 pounds. I have a female, she's only 10 pounds, incredibly long-haired. And so she doesn't necessarily like to be groomed. So you kind of have to, when we were first getting to know her, we had to convince her that it was an act of love. This is an act of love. I'm doing this because I love you. I'm doing this because I love you. I'm doing this because you hate it when you get those big ball things underneath there. You don't like that, and you can't even chew at them to get them out. You have to. It's an act of love, and the only way you can communicate that to a nonverbal creature is to project, to give them love in the container, because they know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's a lot what a focusing session is like, is that. You talked about modeling with children. So with a client, there could be all kinds of resistance that's keeping you from writing chapter 3. And my job is to love that.
My problem, I'd write, instead of writing 15 pages, I'd write 45. But what I'm getting from what you're saying about focusing is intention is important.
There's absolutely, in the purposeful practice of focusing, as opposed to just that innate felt sense that we all have. In the purposeful practice of focusing, there is intention and there is action. And the intention is to be radically accepting. And we can't always love everything we find inside of us. I mean, we have incredible, particularly when you get to something that might be blocked, I mean, you can find incredibly negative, self-criticizing parts that seem very self-destructive, and it can be really hard to be loving with those. Yet, we want to bring that radical acceptance that there is a message there. There is a message there that's actually about my life forward survival, my life forward energy. Just like, everybody's seen examples of what we would consider to be really rotten parenting in the grocery store. People yelling at their children, people jerking them by the arm, whatever. And while we might say, what a rotten parent, what the heck is wrong with that person? We don't know how they learned that. We don't know how they learned to do that. And we don't.
Well, I can tell you one thing, that person was out of control.
Exactly. And they're not in touch. I'm pretty sure that nobody has children because they're hoping they can have someone to beat and abuse for the rest of their lives. And maybe there was something that wasn't intentional about having children. Still and yet, I don't believe that they actually had a goal of going to the grocery store so they could yell at, verbally abuse, and jerk their children around.
And if they have a conscience, they'll feel bad about that, and they would need to focus on those feelings.
And until they develop that connection with how that actually feels to do that to their child, they're not going to be able to do that. When people behave that way towards their children, they have no concept of what that really feels like to hurt that person, hurt that child.
And one of the reasons they might not have a concept is that when we're under stress, we get physically numbed out. So we can't even feel our feelings.
Exactly.
And I think that's where focusing helps, is it clears the space and allows a person to feel.
Exactly. So again, just to give you another example of what the difficulty is and why it's so helpful to have a process, is because we would actually start with that sense of being numb.
Mm-hmm.
That is the starting place. That is where we start, is that the sense of the whole thing is numb.
Unfortunately, we have 2 minutes left, but I wanted to ask you about the
sure.
interrelationship focusing.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
Well, interrelationship focusing, as distinguished from other types of focusing, has a very particular emphasis on the language that we use in order to be accepting. And Ann Weiser Cornell, for instance, was a linguist, and so has a wonderful background in being able to help us craft language so that when I give some feedback and help to create a container with a client, that I'm not using words that just inherently, though I might not be aware of it in my speech, might have a negative impact.
What are some of the languages that you, some of the words that you use?
Well, for instance,
because I'm familiar with internal family systems, but I'm wondering if this is similar or different.
well, just sticking with the language for a moment.
I just got the sign for 1 minute, so got to make it real brief.
One thing we do is we don't ever label anything.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't say, I am afraid. You say, there is something that's fearful or something that is afraid about this. We don't put labels on anything. Just
And briefly, why?
Because the truth is, you're Jay. You're not afraid.
Yeah.
You are the essence and energy of Jay. And in your entire experiencing,
So
is
my true self is not
Exactly.
afraid.
Exactly.
All right. I think we need to wrap up. For more information about Laura Despain, her workshops, Infinity Foundation, and her Quest talk show, stay tuned to the credits at the end. Until next time, wish you good health, good spirits, and good fortune. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you, Jay. It's been a pleasure.
For more information about this show, our guests, Infinity Foundation, or any of our other programs, please visit our website, infinityfoundation.org, or call us at 847-831-8828.